Turbocharger, Supercharger. Two ways to cram more air into your engine. Two different methods of making more power. One uses exhaust gas, the other runs right off a belt. But why would you pick one over the other? Which one gives you the best bang for buck? And if you're trying to make the most power out of your engine, which one's the real MVP? It's Whine versus Whistle, and today on Autolab, we're gonna find out.
Hey, this is your shot at 100 free entries. Yes, free entries into our very first giveaway. This 700 horsepower Bayside Blue GTR plus a good old $10,000 cash. Click below to claim your free entries right now. And you want even better odds? Well, grab a digital entry pack and unlock the biggest multiplier for the most chances to win. Don't wait, entries close soon. Good skill, and hopefully I'm tossing the keys to this GTR to you.
Before we can debate which one is better, we gotta start with the basics. Both these bad boys have one job: shove more air into your engine. More air means we can add more fuel, which adds up to more power. And that's why, generally speaking, larger engines are more powerful. Both turbos and superchargers are really just types of compressors that, with some more fuel and careful tuning, can make something like the 2-liter in your Civic flow about the same amount of air as a naturally aspirated 4-liter when under full boost. With either of these, we've sort of found the replacement for displacement. A smaller, lighter weight, high revving engine that behaves like a much bigger one? It's like having your cake and eating it too, right? Well, it's not that simple. There are drawbacks to each, but before we get into that, let's take a quick look at how these babies actually work. Let's start with the turbo. It's basically like the recycling king of power, because while your engine is pushing out exhaust, which it's doing all the time anyway while it's running, the turbine inside the turbocharger captures some of that flow and thermal energy. That turbine is connected to a compressor wheel, which spins up and shoves more air into your intake. It's like giving your engine a second breath using the exhaust that would otherwise just head on out the tailpipe. It's a pretty smart setup. We're essentially using waste energy to make even more power. But here's the thing. Plumbing and controlling turbos is kinda complicated, and it takes a second for that turbo to really get spinning. That's what we call turbo lag. Now, superchargers are a bit more straightforward. They're powered directly by the engine itself. Usually, they're hooked up with a belt to the crankshaft. So as soon as your engine's moving, the supercharger is spinning, forcing more air down the engine's throat for basically instant power. The result, well, depending on the type of supercharger, is no lag. As soon as you hit the gas, you get the power. Plus, they're pretty simple. Sounds like a winner, right? There's a trade-off. Since it's powered by the engine, a supercharger has to use some power to make power. Plus, how much air it can flow and its efficiency range is more limited. Now, there are different types of superchargers and turbochargers and different ways to set them up. And for the most part, this isn't exactly new technology here. Both have been around for over 100 years. Fun fact, turbochargers and superchargers actually got their start in planes and boats, way before they found their way into cars. Back then, they were all about helping engines breathe better at high altitudes and improving power and efficiency out on the open sea. Renault developed a supercharged car for racing in 1902, and Mercedes brought superchargers more mainstream in the 1920s. Meanwhile, turbochargers weren't really mass introduced into the auto industry until the 60s with cars like the Olds Jetfire and Chevy Corvair. And it wasn't until the 70s and 80s with models like the Porsche 911 Turbo, Saab 99 Turbo, and BMW 2002 Turbo that turbocharging really started to take off in both performance and everyday cars. Look, honestly, we could do a whole video on the history of forced induction here, but not today. What you need to know is forced induction has been around a long time and used to great effect, especially in racing. And back in the day, think like the muscle car era, the supercharger was king. You could just bolt a big-ass Ruth-style blower on top of your mom's Buick and go terrorize the drag strips for not a ton of money. But there's a catch. Superchargers are heavy and complicated to build, and like we said earlier, they're limited by how many RPMs you can stick in its snout, and they take power to make power. And it's not an insignificant amount. For instance, a modern top fuel dragster can use anywhere from 800 to 1,000 horsepower just to drive its blower. I mean, it returns you with somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12,000 horsepower, so that's a good investment. Oh, and quick side note here, a blower is essentially just another type of supercharger. The result is the same, but it gets there a slightly different. We'll get to that in a second. The 2.7 liter unit on the SRT Demon demands a sacrifice of more power than an entire Miata makes to get its blades turning. And once they are, if it breathed from inside the car, it would drain the entire cabin of air in just 800 feet on a drag strip. But luckily it breathes from outside instead. Look, nothing in the world is free. Well, except subscribing to Ideal, so do me a favor and go ahead and get that done. So that's all fine. I mean, there's no such thing as free horsepower, right? Wrong! Sort of. Because while superchargers rocked the 60s, turbochargers ruled the 80s. With turbochargers, cars started hitting power levels not seen since the gas crisis, all while maintaining emission standards. Because while superchargers take energy from the crankshaft of the engine to do their job, a turbocharger uses the velocity and heat energy of the exhaust gas that's already screaming down the exhaust pipe. Think of it like putting a pinwheel in a wind tunnel, and then using that energy created by that turbine to shove more air into your engine's throat. Manufacturers could build smaller, more economical, cleaner engines that sipped gas cruising around, but could absolutely throw down when you buried your right foot. But enough about all that. If you want to learn more about how turbochargers or superchargers actually work, well, we've got you covered with other videos that we'll link here and at the end of the video. Let's break down the different kinds of each and start figuring out which one's best. Not all boost is created equal. For the turbochargers, there's the single turbo, the parallel turbo, the compound turbo, twin stage turbos, variable geometry turbos, and now there are even turbos that are electrically assisted. The single turbo is exactly what it sounds like. It's just one basic turbocharger that feeds the whole engine. The twin turbo is basically the same thing, but with one turbo per bank of cylinders. With twin turbos, you get faster response and more power overall. Then there's sequential turbos. Now we're getting fancy. Sequential turbos use a smaller turbo for low RPM and a larger turbo for high RPM boost. The result? Minimal lag and power that builds and builds all the way to rev. Compound turbos are basically the same thing, except instead of the smaller turbo passing things off to the bigger turbo, the smaller turbo's only job is to help get the bigger one spinning for huge boost. You see this setup on big power diesel stuff all the time. Then there's the variable geometry turbo that, by adjusting the angle of its internal vanes, can reduce lag and maximize airflow at any RPM. And lastly, there are electrically assisted turbos, which use a powerful electric motor to spin up instantaneously before exhaust gases are flowing fast enough. These are kind of the hot new thing in the industry and virtually eliminate turbo lag. As for superchargers, the root style supercharger is the granddaddy of them all, and I can pretty much guarantee you've seen one sticking out of the hood of an old hot rod or muscle car. It sits right on top of the engine, and unlike other compressors, the roots doesn't actually compress air inside the housing. Instead, it works like a pair of giant air scoops that blow air into the engine. The twin screw is a bit more refined. It compresses air as it sucks it in, which gives it better efficiency than the roots and doesn't sacrifice that instant power. Lastly, the centrifugal. You can think of this guy kind of like a turbo that runs off a belt. It's lightweight, mounts off to the side, meaning it fits under the hood of way more cars, and gives a smooth boost curve. But you won't get that immediate hit of power like you do with the other two. Whew, that's a lot of information. Let's talk pros and cons. We'll start with superchargers. Instant power is the name of the game here. As soon as you press the gas, it's go time. That makes them ideal for applications where response matters. They're simple to install, ridiculously reliable in no small part thanks to how simple they are, and they make cool noises. But since a supercharger is powered by the engine itself, it's a bit of a power thief. You're sacrificing some of your engine's energy to get the boost. That's why you won't often find superchargers on most smaller engines. They just don't have the extra juice to spare. Also, they're complicated to make, which makes them expensive. Getting more boost out of a supercharger isn't as straightforward as it is with most turbos. They aren't exactly lightweight, and unless you're going for a centrifugal style charger, having room under the hood can definitely be a problem. Lastly, they're just not as efficient as turbochargers. Some recent supercharged engines like Audi's later 3-liter incorporated a clutch and a bypass valve for times when you didn't really need the extra boost, which helped. But still, OEMs have all moved on to turbos almost exclusively for a reason. Turbochargers, on the other hand, have the efficiency game locked down. They recycle energy that would otherwise go to waste, making them super efficient for squeezing more power out of a smaller engine. That's why you see them in everything from tiny hatchbacks to top-end exotics. There's almost no efficiency loss when you're not in boost, and the power ceiling is pretty high. I mean, take a humble Golf GTI or basically any turbocharged car. With just software, no mechanical changes, you're easily making an additional 100 horsepower over stock. But there are downsides. Turbo lag for one. Engineers have worked around this with twin-scroll turbos, electric assistance, and those variable geometry types we talked about, but it's still not as instant as a supercharger. Also, turbos are more complicated. They often require plumbing for cooling and oiling, and they have to be piped into the exhaust as well as the intake. And they need more complicated control mechanisms like wastegates and blow-off valves, and while superchargers are expensive, it's not like turbos are exactly cheap here. I mean, their internals spin in excess of 100,000 RPM, which takes some pretty precise machining. So, which one is best? Well, like most things in life, it depends on what you want out of your engine. If you're after raw instant power, let's say you're building a drag car or a muscle car, or if you like the way your car drives already naturally aspirated, you just want more of that, a supercharger might be the move. But if you want huge power, and don't mind the more complex nature or waiting half a second for power to build, a turbocharger might be the better option. Ultimately, it comes down to your car, preference, and budget. Buying a factory-equipped forced induction car is usually the safest bet because the manufacturer has engineered it to handle the added stress of boost. They've dialed in the details like lowering the compression ratio to prevent detonation and adding oil squirters to keep the pistons cool under pressure. But hey, we're all for the idea of turbocharging a GR86 just as much as the next guy. If you're on a budget, you can snag dirt cheap turbo kits on eBay. Sure, they might require some extra effort to fit and maybe a bit of fabrication, but if it blows up, just get another one and go again. Just make sure you do your homework on the specific car, kit, or compressor you're eyeing so you know what you're getting into. Forced induction is hands down the best bang for buck way to add horsepower, no matter what you choose. So there you have it. If you want instant power and that iconic whine, go supercharger. But if you're after maximum power, more efficiency, and don't mind a bit of lag, turbos are the name of the game. If you liked this video, you're gonna love either of these that dives in deeper on turbochargers and superchargers respectively, so go check them out. If you're new here, get subscribed because we've got more Autolab coming at you every single week. My name's Trav, thank you all for watching, see you next time.